Live powerfully without anyone knowing. Written and published by Audiobook Mindset. Imagine a life where no one knows your next move, but they feel your presence everywhere. A life so focused, so silent, so powerful that your success becomes a shock, not a story. While the world screams for attention, you move in silence. You don't post about your goals, you become them. You don't chase applause, you earn respect without saying a word. This is the path of those who don't need to be seen to be great. Of those who disappear, not to hide, but to sharpen their edge. You train in silence. You build in silence. You rise in silence. And when you finally emerge, the world won't see a work in progress. They'll see a force that can't be stopped. If you're tired of noise, distraction, and empty validation, if you're ready to win privately, grow quietly, and live powerfully without anyone knowing, this is your path. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Power of Quiet Preparation. Every true champion begins, not on a stage, not in the spotlight, but in complete silence. In the quiet of early mornings when the world is asleep, or during those late nights when everyone else has given up for the day, that's when greatness is born. These are the hidden hours, the invisible sacrifices, the moments of discipline that no one claps for. But they are the most important. Quiet preparation is not about being secretive, it's about building strength without distractions. It's a powerful time where you're not performing for the world, you're not trying to impress anyone. You're focused entirely on growth. In this silence, you can fail and try again, without judgment. You can experiment, stumble, learn, and improve. You can ask the hard questions: am I getting better? What do I need to change? And you can answer them honestly because no one is watching. The pressure to be perfect disappears and real progress begins. You don't need to post your efforts or share every move, because when you're truly focused, talking becomes a distraction. Let your silence become your strength. The gym, the books, the plans, the work, it's all sacred. It's not for show, it's for you. And the beautiful thing, when your results finally appear, when the transformation becomes visible, the world will be stunned. They won't see the thousands of hours behind your progress. They won't understand the sweat, the discipline, the inner battles you fought in silence. They'll ask, when did this happen? But you'll know the truth. It happened every single day, quietly, consistently, powerfully, while no one was watching. That is the power of quiet preparation. It's not just where success begins, it's where your unshakable foundation is built. Chapter 2. Stop explaining yourself. You don't owe the world a story. Most people fall into the trap of constantly explaining what they're doing, why they're doing it, and who they're doing it for. They feel compelled to justify every choice, every ambition, and every move. But every time you explain yourself, you give away your power. Think about it. When you share your strategy or pour out your motivations, you invite opinions, doubts, and interference. Suddenly, your energy shifts from creation to defense. You begin to second-guess yourself because you've handed your momentum to others who have not earned it. Imagine trying to write a book, but stopping at every sentence to tell everyone what your next chapter will be or why you chose that plot twist. You'd never finish. The act of explaining interrupts your flow. It turns your focus outward, to people who may not understand your journey, instead of inward, where your true work lies. When you stop talking and start doing, you liberate yourself from the noise of unsolicited advice, criticism, and envy. You preserve the clarity of your vision. When you don't owe the world a story, you protect your confidence. In silence, you ask yourself the only question that matters: am I getting closer to my goal today? You don't wonder what others think, because their opinions no longer hold weight over you. Without the burden of explanation, you reclaim the energy you previously spent convincing others and redirect it into refining your skills, deepening your knowledge, and strengthening your resolve. When you choose not to explain, you force people to pay attention to results rather than words. They can't argue with your outcomes. They can't undermine your progress. If they don't see it happening, they assume you aren't working, and that's exactly where your advantage lies. You're making moves under the radar, growing in the shadows, and saving every ounce of your mental and emotional energy for the fight ahead. This doesn't mean you become a mystery for the sake of mystique. It means you differentiate between who deserves to know your plans and who doesn't. You communicate with those who matter: mentors, coaches, close friends who support you, while shielding your process from everyone else. This selective sharing builds a protective barrier around your ambitions. It's a form of respect for your own journey. You're telling the world, I don't need to prove myself. My actions will demonstrate my worth. In everyday life, it might look like people asking what your next big move is. Instead of unloading your entire blueprint, you simply nod, smile, or give a brief answer. You resist the temptation to elaborate. When people ask why you spend hours studying or training, you don't feel obliged to justify it. You might say, because it matters to me, and leave it at that. The less you reveal, the more room you have to grow without interference or distraction. By not explaining, you also cultivate self-reliance. You learn to trust your own reasoning and judgment above all else. When external validation no longer becomes the driving force behind your decisions, you develop an unshakable inner compass. You become comfortable with uncertainty, knowing that you don't need anyone else's approval to progress. This inner confidence makes you immune to critics and reduces the power envy has over your mindset. Over time, people will start to notice shifts in your behavior: the extra hours of work, the improved skills, the new opportunities you quietly create. They'll wonder how you did it. And when they finally see your transformation, they'll realize that no explanation is necessary because your results will speak louder than any words ever could. Stopping the need to explain yourself is not about arrogance or indifference. It's about valuing your energy and focusing it where it truly matters, on getting better, moving forward, and achieving your goals. When you no longer owe the world a story, you free yourself to write your own narrative in silence, and that is a powerful act of self-mastery. Chapter 3. Protect your vision. Privacy is a form of power. Your vision is like a delicate sapling full of promise, but vulnerable to external forces until it takes root and grows strong. In today's world of instant updates and oversharing, revealing every detail of your plan too early can leave your goals exposed to criticism, distraction, and dilution. Protecting your vision through privacy creates a sanctuary where your ideas can mature without interference. This chapter explores why privacy is vital to turning intentions into reality, and how keeping your plans to yourself empowers you to build something truly meaningful. When you first conceive an idea, new project, a personal transformation, or a bold career move, it exists in its most fragile state. Sharing it prematurely is like broadcasting a half-built house before laying the foundation. Well-meaning friends or acquaintances may offer helpful suggestions that come from their own limited experiences. Critics might mock or discourage you before you have a chance to prove them wrong. Even those who celebrate your idea can unintentionally siphon your energy by centering the conversation on praise rather than on the work itself. By choosing privacy, you protect your vision from all these distractions. Operating in private allows you to experiment without fear of being judged. Early iterations of any concept are often imperfect, rough around the edges, and incomplete. If you broadcast every draft or prototype, you invite scrutiny of your unpolished efforts. In contrast, working quietly behind closed doors gives you permission to fail and to fail again without shame. When each experiment happens in solitude, you can identify flaws, pivot swiftly, and refine your approach, unburdened by outside expectations. As a result, your final product emerges stronger and more polished than if you'd sought approval at every step. Privacy also nurtures confidence born from self-reliance, rather than external validation. If you habitually solicit feedback or brag about progress, you depend on others to affirm your worth. Every like, comment, or congratulatory message becomes a temporary boost, but it never truly cements your belief in yourself. When you shield your efforts from public view, you learn to trust your own judgment. You set goals, pursue them, and measure success based on your own standards. This internal feedback loop, recognizing your own small breakthroughs and improvements, builds a resilient mindset that remains unshaken by criticism or praise. Another advantage of maintaining privacy is preserving your creative energy. Constantly answering questions about your plans, entertaining unsolicited advice, or managing others' expectations drains mental bandwidth. That same energy, if invested in silent action, can accelerate your progress significantly. By withholding details, you avoid the urge to explain every twist or turn of your process. Instead, you channel that extra focus into writing drafts, fine-tuning prototypes, or mastering a new skill. Over time, those uninterrupted blocks of concentrated effort compound into substantial gains that would have been impossible if you'd fragmented your attention through over-communication. Privacy also heightens the element of surprise when you finally choose to reveal your work. Think of a magician who practices in a secluded space. The final performance dazzles because the audience never saw the preparation. Similarly, when you keep your vision hidden, people don't know what to expect. They may hear rumors of something significant happening behind the scenes, but without concrete details, their anticipation grows. By the time you unveil the finished product, whether it's a published book, a launched business, or a personal transformation, the impact is magnified. Observers aren't questioning when will it be done. They're astonished by the level of polish and depth they encounter in the completed work. In practical terms, protecting your vision means being selective about whom you trust with specific information. Close confidants, mentors, coaches, or a small circle of trusted friends can provide valuable insights without compromising your privacy. These individuals respect your journey and offer feedback only when solicited, helping you refine ideas rather than diluting your focus. For everyone else, you offer brief, concise answers that neither reveal your entire plan nor invite further questioning. Phrases like, "I'm working on something important right now," or "I'm refining my approach before sharing more," communicate that you're focused without giving away details. Maintaining privacy also builds humility. When you refrain from broadcasting minor wins or announcing tentative plans, you avoid the trap of appearing boastful or prematurely confident. You learn to value substance over showmanship. This humility keeps you grounded because you recognize that true progress often happens out of sight. The extra hour spent reading, the silent practice sessions before the public performance, or the late-night brainstorming that never makes it onto social media. When you finally choose to share a milestone, you do so from a place of genuine accomplishment rather than for applause or validation. Protecting your vision fosters resilience in the face of setbacks. When no one else is watching, a failure doesn't become a public spectacle. Instead, it stays as your own lesson to learn from. You can analyze missteps honestly, make adjustments, and try again without worrying about outside perceptions. This private reckoning builds emotional strength because you become accustomed to viewing challenges as personal opportunities rather than threats to your reputation. Each time you encounter an obstacle in solitude and overcome it, you reinforce the belief that you can handle adversity without seeking anyone's approval. Privacy creates space for deep reflection. When you work quietly, you can pause and ask yourself critical questions. Why did that approach not work? What can I change to improve? How does this decision align with my long-term vision? Such introspection is often sidelined when you prioritize external commentary over internal insight. But by carving out a private zone for reflection, journaling your thoughts, meditating on your progress, or sketching new ideas in a notebook, you nurture a level of self-awareness that becomes a compass for smarter choices. Consider the legacy of innovators who guarded their visions until the right moment. From inventors who toiled in hidden workshops to writers who used pen names to avoid premature scrutiny, history celebrates those who understood the power of privacy. They knew that the quality of their eventual contribution depended on the conditions under which it was developed. By following their example, shielding your vision until it's strong enough to stand on its own, you align yourself with individuals who changed their fields, not by seeking early attention, but by mastering their craft in silence. Privacy is not secrecy for its own sake. It is strategic discretion. It is the shelter where raw potential matures into formidable reality. By protecting your vision, you ensure that each step you take remains unharassed by distractions, untainted by premature judgment, and undiluted by unnecessary input. You build confidence on your own terms, preserve creative energy for the tasks that matter, and harness the power of surprise when you finally choose to reveal your work. This chapter shows that privacy is not an obstacle to growth, but rather the very soil in which lasting success is cultivated. Chapter 4. Let your absence speak. Silence is loud when you're focused. Stepping away from the spotlight doesn't mean you're inactive. It means you're deliberately choosing to invest your energy into meaningful work rather than performative noise. When you remove yourself from constant chatter, whether that's social media updates, casual office talk, or well-intentioned, helpful conversations, you create a powerful vacuum. In that vacuum, your focus intensifies, your creativity sharpens, and your results become the only testimony you need. When you decide to be absent, you reclaim time that would otherwise leak away in distraction. Every notification dismissed, every small talk sidestepped, and every group chat you don't scroll through adds precious minutes, sometimes hours, to your day. In those reclaimed moments, you can settle into a deep state of concentration where ideas flow freely, problems unravel, and skill development accelerates. This level of focus is akin to tuning out background noise in order to hear a whisper. It's in that whisper that your next breakthrough often hides. You learn to recognize that silence is not emptiness, but a fertile ground where real progress takes root. Your absence also creates an aura of intrigue. When you consistently withdraw from updating colleagues or acquaintances on your progress, they naturally grow curious. What is he working on? Why hasn't she posted in weeks? That curiosity acts as a magnet. People begin to sense that something important is unfolding behind the scenes. Without having to announce your every step, you harness others' natural inclination to notice change. Once you reappear with tangible results, a completed project, a refined skill set, a major milestone, your return resonates with impact, because people know you weren't idly absent. You were silently building something of value. Beyond reclaiming time and sparking curiosity, absence also safeguards your mental bandwidth. Each time you tune into messages or get drawn into casual debates about your strategy, your brain must pivot from creation to conversation. That pivot isn't instantaneous. It costs energy and clarity. By choosing to stay silent, turning off notifications, closing distracting apps, or politely declining social engagements, you shield your mind from unnecessary interruptions. In that protected state, you can think through complex challenges, develop nuanced perspectives, and execute tasks that demand sustained attention. The work you produce in that uninterrupted rhythm carries a quality and depth that piecemeal efforts simply cannot match. Absence hones your discipline. In a world where everyone else broadcasts their wins and posts hourly updates, resisting the urge to share requires self-control. Each moment, you choose not to upload a progress photo or to elaborate on your next big idea. You practice saying no to impulsive validation. Those small acts of restraint compound over time, strengthening your ability to commit to long-term goals even when instant gratification beckons. You begin to view silence not as a void to be filled, but as a tool to wield a space where you can cultivate resilience and self-reliance. Absence also invites you to confront your own doubts and insecurities. Without an audience to reassure you, every decision, every early failure, and every stumble happens in private. That privacy can feel uncomfortable at first. You may wrestle with questions like, "Am I heading in the right direction?" Or, "What if I fail without anyone cheering me on?" However, those private confrontations with uncertainty are precisely where true confidence is forged. Each time you navigate a challenge without external affirmation, you build trust in your own judgment. When you finally emerge from your cocoon of silence, you carry not only the evidence of your progress, but also the quiet assurance that you earned it independently. Your absence also deepens the quality of your relationships. When you step back from constant communication, you clarify your boundaries and signal that your work demands respect. Family, friends, and colleagues learn that when you reach out or engage, your presence is fully genuine and intentional. Instead of scattered, half-hearted interactions, you offer moments of true connection because you're not dividing your attention. This shift transforms casual acquaintances into trusted allies who understand that your silence isn't coldness, but a necessary environment for your growth. When you do re-engage, the conversations are richer and more focused because they're not littered with distractions. Another powerful aspect of absence is how it transforms your reputation. In a sea of people vying for attention, the one who consistently does the work under the radar and then suddenly delivers a finished masterpiece commands respect. Your accomplishments become the talking point rather than your words or promises. People recognize that while others were busy explaining every minor step, you were quietly building something substantive. That contrast elevates your status in the eyes of peers, mentors, and potential collaborators. They learn to value your actions more than your announcements, and to trust that when you do choose to speak or present, it's because you have something worthy to share. Absence also cultivates an economy of energy. When you limit appearances virtual or in person, you save emotional and mental resources that would otherwise be spent on managing impressions. Imagine how draining it is to constantly gauge which posts will perform well, or how to phrase updates to elicit praise. Each of those calculations detracts from genuine creation. But in silence, those resources are available for deep work. You can devote every ounce of your energy to refined thinking, skillful practice, and strategic planning. Over time, the compounded output of those focused sessions far surpasses any temporary boost you might receive from external feedback loops. It's important to note that absence isn't a one-way street of total isolation. Strategic absence balances bold withdrawal with intentional check-ins. You might close your doors for an extended period to finish a project, yet still drop a concise, meaningful note to your closest supporters, just enough to let them know you're progressing. This selective communication prevents your network from assuming you've vanished entirely, while still preserving the majority of your quiet space. When you do reappear, you've built momentum silently, but maintained the trust of those who matter most. ensuring that your return is met with encouragement rather than worry. Absence also primes you for moments of clarity. When you operate in constant reactive mode, responding to emails, comments, or unsolicited advice, your vision can become muddled by others' agendas. But in extended silence, you create the mental distance needed to assess your path objectively. You can revisit your goals, realign with your values, and decide if any course correction is necessary. These stretches of quiet introspection are where big pivots and discernments happen. You might realize that your project needs a different angle, or that certain methods aren't serving your ultimate purpose. In the hush of absence, you can see the bigger picture and make courageous adjustments without external pressure. Letting your absence speak teaches you to trust timing. By not rushing to fill every moment publicly, you learn patience. You recognize that not everything must be shared immediately. Some breakthroughs emerge only when you allow adequate space for development. That trust in timing spills over into how you approach deadlines, product launches, or life decisions. You become adept at sensing when the moment is right, when your work is refined enough to impress, when the market is ready for your idea, or when your personal growth is mature enough to handle broader exposure. In essence, absence trains you to listen to your own internal clock instead of the external drumbeat of trends and expectations. Letting your absence speak is an exercise in purposeful silence. It's the deliberate choice to prioritize substance over spectacle and to cultivate a mind steeped in deep focus rather than fragmented by distraction. When you master the art of strategic withdrawal, you reclaim time, sharpen your creativity, fortify your discipline, and strengthen your relationships. You allow your work, rather than your words, to announce your presence. And when you finally emerge, you do so with the undeniable proof that you were not idle, you were silently mastering your craft until you were ready to astound. Chapter 5. Win small, win daily, but tell no one. True transformation is built not on grand gestures, but on tiny, consistent actions taken day after day, wins so small they barely register to anyone else. Yet each of those miniature victories carries a spark of progress. Perhaps you woke up 15 minutes earlier, read a single extra page of a book, or resisted one extra craving. Those moments of discipline may seem trivial in isolation, but they're the building blocks of meaningful change. When you keep these small wins to yourself rather than broadcasting them, you preserve their power and feed an internal wellspring of motivation that external validation can never replicate. Imagine a stack of pebbles, each one representing a minor success: drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, jotting down a paragraph of your journal, or spending 5 focused minutes learning a new language. If you announce every pebble to the world, you risk turning your progress into performance, seeking likes, comments, or fleeting praise. That shifts your focus from genuine growth to seeking approval. When you keep these pebbles private, you hold on to the intrinsic reward that comes from acknowledging your own effort. You experience the subtle thrill of, "I did that," without letting anyone else dilute or redefine what that accomplishment means to you. Every time you share a small achievement publicly, "Just finished my warm-up run," or "Solved problem number 3, you activate a dopamine response tied to external feedback. The likes, the "great job," the applause. That is satisfying in the moment, but it trains your brain to rely on outside signals. If the praise doesn't follow, your enthusiasm can wane. Conversely, when you celebrate quietly, you trigger an internal dopamine release based purely on your own assessment of progress. This shift from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation is critical because intrinsic motivation endures when external applause fades or disappears altogether. Consider how habits form. Experts agree that habits are the result of a feedback loop. Cue, action, reward. If the reward depends on someone else saying, "Well done," you lose momentum on days when you don't hear that praise. But if the reward is the personal satisfaction of knowing you followed through, you reinforce the loop independently of audience reaction. For instance, if you decide to meditate for 10 minutes every morning, and you log it privately, perhaps simply by noting it in a notebook, you begin to feel proud each time you complete the session. That private pride becomes the reward, nudging you to wake up early again. Over weeks and months, this invisible habit compounds into deeper focus, reduced stress, and greater mental clarity, even though no one else sees you meditating. Keeping small wins to yourself also inoculates you against envy and comparison. In public spaces like social media, people tend to share only polished summaries, photos of completed workouts, snapshots of finished essays, or highlights of income milestones. It's a biased sample of achievement that can skew perceptions. Everyone else seems to be crushing every goal, while you struggle. But remember that what you see is only the tip of the iceberg. Behind every flashy post lie countless private setbacks and revisions. By focusing on your own private wins, you avoid the trap of comparing your messy, authentic progress to others' edited highlight reels. You learn to value your own timeline, your own pace, and your unique path free from the distortion of comparison. Private victories foster resilience in the face of setbacks. When you stumble skipping a day of practice or missing a mini goal, you don't have to explain or defend yourself. There's no public record of every tiny promise you made, so it's easier to pick up the pieces without feeling the weight of others' expectations. Suppose you plan to read 20 pages of a book each evening, but one night you only read 5. If no one else but you holds you accountable, you can simply note it. I read 5 pages tonight. Tomorrow I'll finish 20. That gentle adjustment keeps you in motion. If, instead, you had publicly proclaimed, "Reading 20 pages every night, no excuses," then a slip feels like a failure broadcast for all to see, creating guilt or discouragement. By keeping goals private, you preserve mental space to learn from small missteps and rebound quickly. Private wins also enable you to refine your process before presenting it to others. When you complete a new workout routine or develop a writing habit entirely in private, you experiment with what works best for you, tweaking intensity, duration, timing, or approach without feeling pressured to adhere to someone else's standard. You might spend 2 weeks testing different running routes before settling on one that challenges you optimally. You might draft several versions of a daily journaling template before you find the questions that actually spark insight. Because no one else is watching, those experiments are free from judgment. The final version you eventually share, say, in a blog post or social media update, is polished, tested, and deeply aligned with your true needs, rather than an unrefined idea made public prematurely. Another benefit of private wins is the way they train your mind to notice incremental progress. When you celebrate tiny gains internally, you develop a habit of scanning your day for positive steps. Instead of dwelling on what you didn't do, you ask, "What did I accomplish today?" That mindset shift encourages gratitude for the journey itself, not just the destination. Over time, your brain becomes wired to spot growth opportunities. The micro-improvement in form during a weightlifting session, the slightly faster recall of a foreign language word, or the moment of clarity when a complex concept finally clicks. These micro-moments, acknowledged privately, accumulate into profound self-awareness and momentum. Private small wins also sharpen your self-reflection skills. When you complete a task like writing a page of a script, waking up at 5 a.m., or preparing a healthy meal, you can pause for a moment and ask yourself, what felt good about that? What was challenging? How can I adjust tomorrow? That reflection, conducted in solitude, deepens your understanding of your own behaviors and attitudes. You notice patterns. Maybe you're most productive when you write in the morning, or you struggle to maintain consistency on weekends. By tuning into these signals without any external noise, you can optimize your schedule and strategy in ways that truly resonate with your unique rhythms. Keeping your small wins private also makes your eventual public achievements even more compelling. Think of a musician who writes and records dozens of songs in private before releasing a debut album. When the world finally hears those tracks, listeners sense the depth of preparation and commitment behind every note. They may not know how many hours went into perfecting the lyrics or mastering the mix, but the song itself carries the weight of those hidden hours. When you choose to share a major accomplishment, publishing a book, launching a side business, or hitting a fitness milestone, your credibility is amplified because your audience intuitively recognizes that you didn't arrive there overnight. The backstory of private labor gives your public moment substance and authority. Winning small and daily in private cultivates long-term consistency. When you don't seek validation for every mini-step, you immune yourself to the emotional roller coaster of external feedback. Whether people like or ignore your updates, your internal commitment remains steady. You learn to derive satisfaction directly from the process of improvement itself. That steady commitment is what allows you to maintain habits over months and years, rather than burning out after an initial surge of enthusiasm. Your private victories become the bedrock of enduring progress because they rely solely on your own standards, not on fluctuating external approval. The act of winning in private, celebrating every small daily achievement internally without announcing it to the world, is the cornerstone of genuine growth. By preserving the intrinsic reward of each minor victory, you build resilience, refine your process, and foster self-awareness free from comparison or distraction. These tiny, invisible steps compound into major breakthroughs. When you finally reach a significant milestone and choose to share it publicly, your result resonates with authenticity and depth. Until that moment, let your private wins be the quiet fuel that propels you forward, each one a testament to your unseen dedication and unwavering focus. Chapter 6. Stay mysterious. They should feel you, not see you. There is a unique kind of power in being an enigma somione whose presence is felt but not fully understood. When you choose to stay mysterious, you deliberately withhold the full details of your journey, revealing only what is necessary. This selective sharing compels others to pay attention not to your words, but to the energy you radiate. By cultivating an air of mystery, you strengthen your personal magnetism, protect your creative process, and maintain the freedom to pivot without external pressure. True mystery begins with the realization that not every thought, plan, or intention needs to be broadcast. In our digital age, many people feel compelled to post constant updates, every achievement, every challenge, and every next step. Yet, those who operate under a veil of discretion reserve their most important moves for private execution. They understand that revealing too much too soon invites unnecessary commentary, criticism, and even inadvertently sabotage. When you keep your plans close to the vest, you own your narrative rather than handing over pieces of it to onlookers. The fewer breadcrumbs you leave, the more curiosity you cultivate. Embracing mystery requires a conscious commitment to boundaries. You decide in advance what information goes no further than trusted allies, mentors, coaches, or a small inner circle, and what remains entirely between you and your goals. When casual acquaintances or acquaintances of acquaintances ask about your next move, you respond with measured brevity. "I have something in the works," or "I'm focusing on a few confidential projects right now." Such concise replies neither confirm nor deny specifics, yet they signal that your energy is precious and not up for casual discussion. Over time, people learn that when you do choose to share, it truly matters. Another layer of staying mysterious lies in how you manage your availability. Constantly being on for everyone dilutes your impact. When you appear at every meeting, reply to every message immediately, or attend every social event, you risk becoming predictable. Predictability breeds complacency in others. They assume your attention is always available and give it only a fraction of their respect or curiosity. By contrast, when you selectively withdraw, declining certain invitations, delaying responses, or closing yourself off to unnecessary chatter, you create a tangible void. People notice your absence and begin to wonder what you're working on. This scarcity transforms you into a focal point, even when you are physically absent, because your absence itself becomes a statement. Something important is happening behind the scenes. Maintaining mystery also involves deliberately managing the flow of information you share. Instead of flooding your network with superficial updates, curate only the most crucial insights. For example, rather than posting daily photos of your workspace or progress reports on every minor task, wait until you have a significant milestone or breakthrough, then share a concise highlight. This approach ensures that when you do communicate, it carries more weight. Your audience come to recognize that your words are not background noise but signals worth tuning into. They learn to value quality over quantity, trusting that when you speak, it's because you have something genuinely valuable to convey. Silence, in this context, is not withdrawal from reality. It's a strategic pause. When you step back from posting on social media or commenting on others' content, you avoid the trap of living for external validation. Instead, you commit your mental energy to deep work. That might mean spending your mornings writing in solitude, refining a prototype, or practicing a skill until it becomes second nature. Because you're not scattering fragments of your process across public channels, you allow your creativity to flow uninterrupted. In that focused state, you develop insights and produce results that far exceed what you could achieve under constant public scrutiny. The aura of mystery also extends to how you handle questions about your progress. When people probe, "How's the new project going?" or "When will you launch?" you resist the urge to elaborate. You've learned that every detail revealed reduces your flexibility. Someone who knows your exact timeline or methodology may feel entitled to weigh in or criticize. Instead, you offer a short, confident answer, "I'm on schedule," or "All going well, more details soon." By giving minimal information, you keep control. Others are left to imagine your trajectory, often as more impressive or dramatic than reality. Their speculation becomes an invisible force, enhancing your mystique. In relationships, professional or personal, being mysterious builds respect. When you share every detail of your life indiscriminately, you risk devaluing your inner world. Friends and colleagues come to expect constant updates and may take your openness for granted. But when you are selectively open, choosing to reveal deeper thoughts, aspirations, or challenges only to those who have proven trustworthiness, you preserve the sanctity of your inner circle. Vulnerability becomes a rare gift rather than an everyday commodity. When you do choose to confide in someone, that person feels honored, and the bond deepens because they know you don't share that level of trust lightly. A crucial aspect of staying mysterious is mastering the art of non-reaction. Arguments, rumors, and gossip are inevitable. Yet, when you refuse to engage, you demonstrate that your focus lies elsewhere. You neither confirm nor deny. You simply continue working. Critics grow frustrated that they cannot provoke a reaction, and over time they realize that your indifference is a form of strength. This silent confidence sends a clear message. You're not swayed by chatter or opinion. Your progress is driven by an internal compass, not by the ebbs and flows of external noise. Cultivating mystery also means being mindful of what you document. You might maintain a private journal, record voice memos, or keep a hidden folder of drafts and ideas. These personal archives allow you to track your evolution without broadcasting every step. When the time is right, you can review these materials to craft a polished narrative or to distill lessons learned. By contrast, someone who shares drafts publicly forfeits the chance to revisit their unfiltered thoughts. Those early drafts become part of the public record, inviting critique before maturity. Your hidden archives, however, remain an unbroken thread connecting your initial vision to the final product. Being mysterious is not about deception or falsehood, it's about intentionality. You offer glimpses, not the entire blueprint. For instance, if you're working on a book, you might mention that you're exploring a specific theme: resilience, focus, or strategy, without revealing the full outline or chapter titles. This level of discretion fuels intrigue. Readers want to know how you interpret those themes, what unique angle you bring, and when your work will be available. By the time you announce the book's release, anticipation has built naturally, and your audience is eager to discover the insights you've carefully cultivated in private. Developing an air of mystery often involves ritual and routine that are unseen by others. Perhaps you have a specific morning ritual: cold shower, meditation, 15 minutes of journaling before you sit down to write or strategize. You don't need to share these steps. Instead, you simply act. Over time, those rituals become the soil in which your creativity and discipline flourish. Because they are shielded from public view, they retain their potency. You don't feel the pressure to perform them for an audience. Your unseen routines feed your results, and when you finally showcase those results, observers sense a level of polish and coherence that hints at disciplined preparation. Equally important is the notion of strategic vulnerability. Total secrecy can backfire if people assume you are inactive or disengaged. To prevent that, sprinkle in occasional, well-timed hints, a brief status update, a photo of your workspace with no caption, or a short message. You'll hear more soon. These tiny reminders confirm that you're still in motion without giving away details. They maintain your relevance in others' minds. When you finally reveal a major accomplishment, the build-up of these subtle signals merges into a crescendo, making your emergence feel both inevitable and impactful. Maintaining mystery also shapes your daily communication style. In meetings, instead of outlining every step of your plan, you present the high-level strategy and leave the specifics to be discovered through action. This approach positions you as a leader who values autonomy and ingenuity in your team. They know that you trust them to handle details, which in turn builds their confidence. When you re-enter the conversation with concrete progress, your input carries more weight because it is informed by weeks or months of uninterrupted work rather than constant back and forth. It's worth noting that staying mysterious doesn't mean never collaborating or seeking help. You can still partner with experts, discuss challenges with mentors, and solicit feedback, but you do so in discreet, controlled settings. You provide enough context for others to contribute meaningfully while withholding unnecessary details that could compromise your strategic advantage. This blend of selective collaboration and private refinement ensures that your final outputs benefit from outside expertise without losing the core vision that originated in your mind. Cultivating a sense of mystery ultimately fosters self-reliance. When you consistently withhold details about your process, you become accustomed to leaning on your own judgment. This self-reliance is a form of resilience. If public support or approval dissipates, you still trust your direction because you've built it independently. You don't rely on external validation to fuel your momentum. Instead, your confidence stems from the quiet knowledge that you did the work in solitude, confronted doubts in private, and emerged stronger on your own terms. Staying mysterious is a practice of selective disclosure, intentional boundaries, and disciplined silence. By revealing only fragments of your journey, you heighten curiosity, preserve creative energy, and protect your mental bandwidth. You build intrigue through absence, manage your availability to create scarcity, and refine your communication so that every word you do share carries weight. Mystery isn't about hiding for its own sake. It's about safeguarding the integrity of your vision and ensuring that when you finally emerge, you do so with maximum impact and credibility. In an era where everyone vies for attention, the person who can move quietly yet command respect through their results becomes a force that others feel long before they ever see. Chapter 7. Emerge only when it's unavoidable. There is an art to revealing your work only at the moment when it cannot remain hidden any longer. When you build quietly, in darkness, each step lays a foundational brick without fanfare. But the true impact comes when you choose to unveil your creation at precisely the right time, when it is so complete, so polished, and so necessary that keeping it secret any longer would be a disservice both to yourself and to those who can benefit from your work. Emerging only when unavoidable is not about secrecy for its own sake. It is about timing, readiness, and strategic impact. Think of a sculptor working on a masterpiece in a dimly lit studio. The hours, days, and weeks spent chiseling away at marble are invisible to the world. During this time, the sculptor refines shape, smooths surfaces, and perfects every detail until the vision in their mind matches the form under their hands. If the sculptor chose to showcase a half-completed statue too soon, criticism would focus on the rough edges, the asymmetry, and the missing details undermining the final reveal. Instead, by working until every angle gleams, then lifting the cover in a single dramatic moment, the sculptor maximizes the impact of that unveiling. Observers see not a work in progress, but a fully realized vision that captures attention and admiration. When your project is still evolving, when ideas are half-formed, prototypes are unstable, or skills are not yet honed, releasing it prematurely invites misunderstandings, skepticism, and unwarranted critique. Criticism at that stage can become discouragement, creating barriers to further refinement. By contrast, if you maintain discretion and only emerge once your work has been stress-tested, refined, and thoroughly vetted, you ensure that others see a final product that speaks for itself. Any questions shift from "will it work" to "how did you accomplish this?" That shift in perception is crucial. It moves you from an uncertain novice to a confident authority. Emerging only when unavoidable also builds anticipation. When people sense you are working on something significant but receive only occasional hints, a cryptic social media post, a brief status update, a private message to close collaborators, they start to wonder what is happening behind the scenes. Human nature craves closure. Curiosity thickens with each passing week or month of silence. By keeping your progress private yet signaling that something important is in the works, you harness this natural curiosity without revealing specific details. When the announcement finally comes, the anticipation culminates in a powerful moment of collective attention. They have waited, they have speculated, and now they are hungry for the truth. Timing, however, is more than just withholding details until the work seems good enough. It requires an awareness of context. What determines good enough is not solely your own sense of readiness, but also the larger environment, market demands, cultural momentum, or organizational priorities. If you launch a new product exactly when consumer interest is at its peak, or publish your findings when competitors cannot counter it, you maximize impact. On the other hand, unveiling too late can mean missing an important window. The balance lies in recognizing when your internal preparation aligns with the external context. Keeping your reveal unavoidable means staying attuned to both your own progress and the world's readiness to receive it. Emerging only when unavoidable protects your emotional resilience. Public scrutiny can be brutal, especially in the early, vulnerable stages of any endeavor. By the time you reveal, you have already faced and overcome many private challenge, technical setbacks, creative blocks, or self-doubt without a watching audience. Each private hurdle strengthened your resolve and refined your approach. When you finally stand in public view, you do so with the calm confidence of someone who has already conquered the toughest battles in solitude. Even if criticism arises at that point, your self-esteem remains intact because you know you arrived here through countless private victories. Another benefit of delayed emergence lies in the advantage of hindsight. When a project unfolds over months or years behind closed doors, you gain a panoramic view of its evolution. You see patterns, learn from missteps, and identify the precise moment when a pivot was necessary. By contrast, announcing early often forces you to defend initial choices or justify subsequent changes to a waiting audience. If you pivot after a public launch, you risk appearing inconsistent or indecisive. But when you emerge only at the end of a lengthy refinement process, you present a cohesive narrative. This is how I got from idea to result. That narrative carries greater authority than a patchwork of announcements and corrections that would characterize a piecemeal rollout. Emerging only when unavoidable also fosters strategic partnerships. When people see a polished, fully functioning solution, they are more inclined to collaborate on equal footing. Imagine you are pitching a joint venture to potential partners. If you approach them with a clear, compelling, market-ready proposal, complete with validated metrics and a working model, they take you seriously. In contrast, if you pitch ideas that still require major revisions, partners might hesitate or demand changes that derail your original vision. By waiting until your concept is airtight, you enter negotiations from a position of strength, with a product or plan that demonstrably works rather than a sketch that still needs color. The principle of emerging only when unavoidable also applies to personal growth. If you are learning a new skill, public speaking, for instance practicing in private, until you have built a level of competence ensures that when you step onto the stage, you minimize the risk of embarrassment and maximize the chance of inspiring others. Every rehearsal in solitude strengthens muscle memory and builds confidence. When the moment comes, whether it's a board presentation, a conference speech, or a vulnerable conversation with a mentor, you deliver with polish and authenticity because you have done the hard work unseen. That kind of launch dissipates nerves and wins immediate respect. In collaborative settings, patience in emergence cultivates trust among teammates. If you share unfinished deliverables, too soon rough code, an unpolished design, or incomplete research, colleagues may assume you lack diligence or foresight. But if you hold back until the work meets your own rigorous standards, your eventual contributions command trust. Others learn that while they may not hear frequent updates from you, they can rely on whatever you do share to be substantive and complete. That reputation for dependable, high-quality results becomes a career asset. People know you don't produce half-baked work, even if it takes longer to appear. On a broader scale, emerging only when unavoidable sends a message about your priorities and values. In a culture that often promotes speed over substance, waiting signals that excellence is more important than haste. You demonstrate a willingness to invest time, resources, and personal energy into creating something with genuine impact. This attitude attracts like-minded collaborators, mentors, and supporters who appreciate that deep work cannot be rushed. When your work finally emerges, It stands as proof that you value quality over quick recognition, and ethos that many find inspiring and trustworthy. Delaying emergence also builds a reservoir of momentum. Once your project is ready, you can release it with a clear, unified vision rather than in staggered pieces. That unified launch generates a ripple effect. Media coverage, social shares, and word of mouth all reinforce each other. If you had dribbled out individual components over time, the buzz might have dissipated before you could introduce the final, most compelling element. By timing your reveal to align with complete readiness, you create a surge of attention that carries your work forward with force. Momentum becomes a self-sustaining cycle. Initial interest draws more interest, and the full impact of your emergence unfolds over weeks or months rather than fading instantly. Of course, the choice to emerge only when unavoidable is not the same as indefinite hiding or procrastination. At some point, a project does become unavoidable when you have achieved a sufficient threshold of quality and relevance. Knowing how to recognize that threshold requires self-awareness and honest assessment. You must be willing to ask hard questions. Is this good enough to stand on its own? Have I tested this thoroughly under different conditions? Does it solve the problem I set out to address? These questions prevent you from delaying out of perfectionism rather than strategic intent. Perfectionism can become a trap that keeps you hiding indefinitely. Strategic emergence demands balancing readiness against diminishing returns from further private refinement. When you do finally emerge, be prepared to own the moment fully. Announce your work with clarity and energy without lingering apologies for any earlier absence. Frame your emergence as a deliberate choice. I've been in deep focus to ensure this is ready, and now I'm excited to share the results. Invite feedback on what's complete, rather than seeking validation for every stage of the process. If questions arise about past decisions, respond calmly, emphasizing that each choice was made to serve the project's vision. By standing proudly behind the final outcome, you reinforce the credibility you built in private. In the aftermath of emergence, maintain a balance between quiet refinement and strategic updates. Once your work is public, you may receive valuable insights and constructive criticism. Approach that feedback with openness, but resist the urge to over-explain or to reveal incomplete iterations born of private experimentation. Instead, integrate feedback into future cycles of private work, then share the updated version when it meets your high standards again. This cycle of hidden refinement, followed by public unveiling, sustains momentum and keeps your audience anticipating the next unavoidable moment. Remember that emerging only when unavoidable is a long-term mindset, not a one-time tactic. Each time you embark on a new project, writing a book, developing a service, or learning an advanced skill, apply the same principle. Cultivate the habit of working in the background until both internal readiness and external context converge. Over time, this disciplined approach becomes ingrained. Your natural rhythm shifts from seeking constant attention to quietly building, knowing that the most significant impact arrives when you choose to emerge. In essence, emerging only when unavoidable transforms your creative process into a masterpiece of timing. It allows you to harness the element of surprise, align your work with optimal context, protect your confidence through private victories, and generate lasting momentum through unified launches. By mastering this chapter of silent strategy, you ensure that when the world finally sees your work, it does so at its most compelling moment, unprepared and captivated by the full force of your unseen dedication. Chapter 8. Sustain your momentum, cultivating enduring power in quiet. Once you've unveiled your work to the world and made a significant impact, the challenge shifts from emerging to enduring. The initial excitement of a successful launch often brings a surge of energy, but that energy can wane if it isn't channeled into lasting habits and a deeper sense of purpose. True momentum grows out of sustained effort, rooted in intrinsic motivation rather than fleeting external applause. To keep your progress alive, you must nourish yourself quietly, returning again and again to the same principles of focus, discipline, and thoughtful refinement that guided you when you were building in private. Maintaining progress begins with clarity of purpose. It helps to revisit why you embarked on this journey in the first place. When your goal was still hidden, it existed as a powerful seed in your mind, feeding on curiosity, conviction, and a vision of transformation. Now that it has grown and been shared, you must reconnect with that original spark. Reflect privately on the deeper reasons behind your work, whether it's a commitment to personal growth, a desire to serve others through your craft, or a long-term ambition that transcends any single milestone. Anchoring yourself in that purpose keeps you grounded when external attention fades, reminding you that the journey continues beyond any one achievement. Reclaimed time becomes your most valuable asset. After the unveiling, the influx of congratulatory messages, interviews, and celebratory events can siphon away hours that were once devoted to focused work. To guard against distraction, carve out regular blocks of time where you disconnect from notifications and social obligations. During these protected intervals, early mornings, late evenings, or weekend morning, immerse yourself in uninterrupted tasks, writing, designing, practicing, or planning. This rhythm of deep work not only preserves the quality of your craft, but also recharges the reservoir of creativity that feeds ongoing progress. It's essential to cultivate an inner feedback mechanism that isn't reliant on external validation. When you used to celebrate small victories, privately finishing a chapter, mastering a chord progression, or refining a prototype, you tapped into a quiet source of satisfaction. Now, that internal rhythm must continue. Keep a personal log or journal where you record micro-wins and note lessons learned from each day's work. Instead of waiting for others to comment on how far you've come, you take a moment at the end of each day to ask yourself what you accomplished, what challenge you overcame, and how you'll advance tomorrow. In doing so, you reinforce a mindset that values progress itself, making each small step a motivating force rather than a public spectacle. Guarded sharing preserves the impact of every update you make. After a major reveal, it's tempting to announce every incremental improvement, new features, minor tweaks, or budding ideas. Yet every time you broadcast a small change, you risk diluting the potency of your next major announcement. Instead, focus on working deeply in private until another notable milestone is within reach. When you do choose to update the world, ensure that the development is substantial, worthy of renewed attention rather than a brief glance. This selective approach means that people come to recognize each public communication as meaningful, keeping them engaged and curious about what's to come. Quiet learning becomes a cornerstone of lasting momentum. Regardless of how much you've already achieved, there is always room to deepen your expertise. Seek out resources that push you beyond your comfort zone. Advanced books, specialized courses, or mentors who challenge your assumptions. Set aside consistent time each week for learning, whether it's dissecting emerging trends in your field, studying new techniques, or simply reflecting on feedback from users or peers. As you integrate new insights into your work behind the scenes, your public outputs will surprise and satisfy because they'll be more refined, relevant, and forward-thinking than before. Strategic collaboration can fuel growth while preserving your focus. Instead of opening your entire process to everyone, continue working closely with a small group of trusted advisors or peers who share your high standards. Schedule periodic deep dives, virtual conferences, private workshops, or one-on-one brainstorming sessions, where you present a specific element of your project for targeted input. This approach allows you to benefit from diverse perspectives without surrendering the privacy that safeguards your creative flow. The feedback you gather in these settings enables you to refine your work in controlled increments, leading to stronger, more cohesive outcomes. Rituals anchor your daily practice and reinforce your identity as a continuous creator. When progress was still hidden, you likely established routines, morning reflections, midday bursts of writing, or evening walks to clear your mind. Now, those rituals become even more crucial. By adhering to consistent patterns, lighting a candle as you write, stretching before you sketch, or reviewing your top 3 tasks before sleep, you signal to your brain that each session of work matters. Over time, these rituals become automatic, ensuring that even on days when motivation is thin, the momentum of habit propels you forward. In private, you deepen these habits, recognizing that each ritual strengthens the foundation of enduring effort. Enduring momentum also requires resilience to criticism and setbacks. After a public success, it's natural to feel invincible, but sooner or later you'll encounter voices of doubt, negative comments, or unexpected obstacles. Rather than reacting impulsively or allowing frustration to derail you, return to your quiet practice of self-assessment. Revisit your personal log, identify lessons learned, and adjust your approach away from the glare of public scrutiny. When setbacks happen behind closed doors, you refine without shame. When they surface publicly, you meet them with calm confidence, knowing that you've already wrestled privately with far tougher challenges. Layered metrics of progress prevent you from fixating on a single benchmark. In public spaces, success is often measured by views, likes, shares, and sales metrics that ebb and flow like tides. To avoid emotional turbulence, identify deeper indicators aligned with your original purpose. Growth in your personal expertise, the number of people positively impacted by your work, or the consistency of your daily practice. For example, if you launched an online course, track not only enrollment figures but also the percentage of students who complete it, the depth of user engagement, and the improvements in their lives. These nuanced measures remind you that real impact often lies beneath the surface, in variables that don't always make headlines but fuel enduring progress. Align your evolving schedule with shifting priorities. In the early days of your project, creation may have consumed most of your time. As public interest grows, you might find yourself dividing hours between content creation, community engagement, and administrative tasks. Periodically take a moment in solitude to reassess where your energy is best spent. If you discover that drafting new material yields greater value than fine-tuning website details, adjust your calendar accordingly, perhaps delegating the latter or scheduling it for occasional deep dive sessions. This continuous calibration in private ensures that your public presence remains coherent and strategically aligned with your long-term vision. Nurturing your physical and mental well-being underpins sustainable momentum. Intense focus and prolonged effort can easily lead to burnout if you neglect rest, exercise, or self-care. In the flurry of post-launch obligations, carve out daily practices, brief meditation sessions, short walks, or simple stretching routines to replenish your energy. Listen to your body. If you feel chronic fatigue or mental fog, grant yourself permission to pause, whether that means a day off or a few hours of undisturbed rest. By honoring these needs privately, you return to your work refreshed and more creative, preventing the slow erosion of enthusiasm that comes from slogging through exhaustion. As you continue to develop and refine, allow yourself to experiment in private once more, refreshing your creative process with new methods, testing different design tools, exploring alternative writing styles, or piloting innovative marketing tactics revitalizes your work. Because these experiments are conducted away from public view, you free yourself to take risks, knowing that any missteps remain hidden until you transform them into lessons. Over time, these private experiments accumulate into a reservoir of fresh ideas and refined techniques. When you eventually showcase their fruits, your audience experiences something genuinely novel and exciting. When the time is right, prepare for the next cycle of emergence by incubating new concepts out of sight. Even as you sustain momentum on your current work, keep a private folder or journal of future idea sketching outlines, jotting down loose concepts, or gathering inspirational research. By nurturing these germinating thoughts in quiet, you create a pipeline of potential projects that can be refined in the background. When one idea reaches its threshold of readiness, you apply the same principle of strategic unveiling. Hold off until the concept is fully formed and relevant to the broader context. This cycle of private incubation followed by public emergence becomes a self-reinforcing loop that builds credibility, deepens your craft, and ensures your creative life never stagnates. Sustaining your momentum after a major breakthrough demands a return to the values that guided your initial rise: deep focus, disciplined habits, selective sharing, continuous learning, and unwavering commitment to purpose. By embedding these practices into your daily life, cherishing the quiet routines, private reflections, and small victories, you transform fleeting success into enduring influence. Each day spent cultivating power in the shadows strengthens the work you ultimately share with the world. In this ongoing process of quiet evolution, you ensure that your impact continues to grow long after the first applause has faded. Chapter 9. Leave a legacy. Inspire others without noise. A life lived in silence, focused on private mastery, ultimately yields a power that resonates far beyond the moment it becomes a legacy. In the end, your greatest accomplishment is not the applause or recognition you receive, but the quiet influence you leave on others who never saw you coming. Leaving a legacy in silence means that your principles, habits, and unseen dedication become a blueprint for those who follow long after you've moved on. This chapter explores how to shape that enduring influence without succumbing to the need for constant visibility. True legacy begins with the small actions that others witness. Indirectly, your unwavering commitment to daily routines, your integrity in making choices when no one's watching, and your humility in sharing credit. These are not broadcast on social media. They are absorbed by colleagues, friends, and family through subtle cues: arriving early, staying late, lending an unspoken helping hand, or offering guidance only when invited. Over time, these consistent gestures create an undercurrent of respect that lasts. People may never know your origin story or every step you took, but they feel the ripple effects of your quiet discipline whenever they encounter excellence modeled in their own work or lives. When you commit to leaving a legacy in silence, you focus on actions whose impact compounds over years. Mentoring a colleague behind closed doors, taking time to review their draft, offering honest feedback, or sharing a hard-won insight plants seeds that grow into their future successes. You don't announce, "I'm mentoring someone today." You simply make time, contribute your wisdom, and let their transformation speak for itself. Similarly, telling a close friend, "I believe you have what it takes," without posting that affirmation online, has a way of imprinting itself on their self-image, inspiring them to persevere when doubts arise. These unheralded investments in others become the bedrock of your legacy, influencing decisions and mindsets generations after the original act. In parallel, document your insights and learnings with future generations in mind, even if those documents remain private for years. Whether you keep a detailed journal of lessons learned from each project, maintain a private folder of annotated resources for your team, or record short voice memos of the principles that guided you through challenges. You are building a knowledge base others can tap into, often without realizing its origin. When those notes eventually surface, perhaps when a mentee discovers your journal entries or a family member revisits an old voice memo, encounter distilled wisdom that transcends fleeting trends. This quiet documentation ensures that your influence stays relevant, even if your name gradually fades from public view. Another facet of lasting legacy is exemplifying resilience in adversity, handling setbacks without fanfare, adapting strategies privately, and emerging stronger. When others observe you returning to work after a personal or professional setback, still upholding high standards, still offering help, still solving problems, they internalize lessons about perseverance more deeply than any public declaration. They don't see the struggle behind closed doors. They see the steady continuation of excellence. That image, unbroken by hardship, resonates in their minds long afterward, guiding them when they face their own obstacles. Cultivating a legacy also means choosing where to place your energy. Rather than chasing visibility through every new platform or trend, identify enduring institutions, your workplace, community organizations, or professional networks where your long-term contribution matters most. Serve quietly on committees, teach a workshop once a year, or contribute thoughtful articles to a specialized newsletter. You may not attract a mass audience, but the selective group you influence will carry your ideas forward. For instance, presenting a comprehensive, well-researched white paper to your professional association will likely be referenced by future members for years, whereas a viral post might be forgotten in weeks. By prioritizing lasting over immediate reach, you allow your legacy to embed itself into the structures that outlive passing attention spans. As you build this quiet influence, it's crucial to let go of the need to control how your legacy is defined. When you shutter away every minor success and only share what you believe to be your finest work, you grant others the freedom to interpret your contributions authentically. They might focus on aspects you never highlighted, perhaps your compassion in difficult moments or your unwavering curiosity, because those qualities spoke louder than any achievement you publicized. Trust that the core values you embody will echo more powerfully than the precise details you share. If you attempt to micromanage public perception of your legacy, you risk reducing it to mere image rather than genuine influence. Building a silent legacy requires foresight about the systems you leave behind. Cultivate open communication channels, robust documentation practices, and clear procedures in any team or organization you lead. When you step away, retire, change fields, or move locations, you leave behind a structure that continues operating effectively, guided by the values and standards you established. For example, instituting a peer review process at work, creating a private repository of best practices, or mentoring a successor who embodies your standards, ensures that the culture you fostered persists. Those structures, though invisible to the outside world, anchor your influence in ways that direct praise never could. Your legacy also thrives when you apply lessons learned in one domain to other areas of life, showing that principles are transferable beyond their original context. If you developed a habit of silent discipline in your fitness routine, rising at dawn to train, logging progress privately, and steadily improving, translating that approach to learning a musical instrument, mastering a foreign language, or nurturing personal relationships, demonstrates that the same quiet power works across pursuits. When people around you see how your private methods manifest in diverse successes, they internalize the universality of those principles. They realize that silence, focus, and consistency can apply to any ambition, inspiring them to adopt similar practices in their own lives. Mentoring is a cornerstone of leaving a durable legacy without public spectacle. Identify one or two individuals whose values and potential align with yours and invest your time in them. Offer feedback on their projects, suggest resources that shaped your thinking, or simply check in to ask how they're confronting challenges. You don't announce each mentoring session on a public platform. Instead, the lessons you impart unfold gradually as your mentees apply them and pass them on. In this way, the ripple effect of your guidance multiplies. Those you mentor in private eventually mentor others, creating a lineage of silent leadership grounded in your original influence. Over time, as the landscape changes, new technologies emerge, societal values shift, or industries evolve, your legacy must adapt without you needing to chase relevance. That adaptation happens when the core lessons you shared are timeless rather than tied to a fleeting trend. Emphasize principles like empathy, critical thinking, basic integrity, and the value of deep work concepts that remain meaningful even if specific tools or platforms change. When you ground your legacy in enduring principles, future generations can reinterpret and apply them to their own challenges, ensuring your influence persists even as the world transforms. Another powerful way to extend your silent legacy is by instilling the values of quiet discipline in those who will carry your torch: family members, close friends, or trusted colleagues. Model the behaviors you want them to emulate, then provide opportunities for them to practice those behaviors in low-pressure settings. For instance, if you revere the habit of daily reflection, occasionally share a thought-provoking question with a younger family member and encourage them to journal their response. When they reflect, refine, and revisit those notes, they absorb not only the practice but also the value you place on self-awareness. As they carry that practice forward, they embody a fragment of your legacy in their own unique context. At the same time, allow yourself to step back and let your influence breathe. Once you've laid the groundwork, mentored successes, documented best practices, codified values, resist the urge to micromanage or to reassert control. True silent legacy thrives when it becomes self-sustaining, guided by the structures and principles you established rather than continuous intervention. When you observe from a distance, you see how your initial seeds have grown in ways you could not have predicted, adapting to new circumstances while retaining their essence. This relinquishing of control is a final act of trust. Trust that your influence will carry on, even when you are no longer at the helm. Finally, recognize that legacy is not solely about professional or creative achievements. It encompasses how you lived your life, how you treated others, and how you dealt with adversity. When you consistently chose honesty over convenience, lent a helping hand without asking for credit, and faced failure with quiet resilience, you created a template for integrity that others notice in subtle, lasting ways. Those who witnessed your compassion during hardship, your patience with a struggling teammate, or your willingness to stand up for someone without fanfare, internalize those lessons and pass them forward. In this manner, your legacy becomes woven into the moral fabric of your community, long after specific projects or titles have faded. Leaving a lasting legacy without noise means that your actions, values, and principles are felt rather than broadcast. By mentoring discreetly, documenting privately, shaping robust systems, and modeling timeless virtues, you create a chain of influence that extends far beyond any single achievement. Others may never see you standing on a podium. They will feel your presence in the way they approach their own work, treat others, and confront obstacles. That invisible impact rooted in silent power is the most profound legacy of all. Chapter 9. Leave a legacy. Inspire others without noise. True influence transcends any single accomplishment. It is the subtle resonance of your principles, values, and quiet actions long after you have moved on. A legacy built in silence does not demand attention. It beckons others to notice patterns of integrity, dedication, and compassion that ripple outward without fanfare. When you choose to shape your legacy under the radar, you invest in the lives of those around you, in networks and communities that carry your influence forward, and in ideas that endure beyond the glare of temporary recognition. The bedrock of a silent legacy is consistency in character and conduct. While many celebrate public victories, you cultivate a reputation for upholding the same standards when no one is watching. Whether you arrive before dawn to refine your skills, stay late to offer guidance to a struggling colleague, or quietly correct a mistake without broadcasting it, each of these small acts stitches a pattern of dependability and honor. Observers, perhaps too busy to comment in the moment, internalize these cues. Over time, they share not the specifics of your actions, but the sense that your presence, even unseen, raises the bar for what is possible and what is worth striving for. Mentoring under the cloak of discretion becomes one of the most potent ways to extend your influence. Instead of announcing formal programs or posting about your coaching sessions, you slot time in your private schedule to meet a promising junior employee, review a friend's draft script, or simply ask a neighbor how they are grappling with a particular challenge. Your feedback, offered without expectation of reward, plants seeds of confidence and competence that grow in unexpected ways. A mentee might draw on your advice years later when facing a crisis. A friend who benefited from your quiet encouragement may, in turn, lend that same support to someone else. This unbroken chain of mentorship weaves a tapestry of empowerment that stretches far beyond your immediate sphere. Another facet of leaving a silent legacy lies in the thoughtful curation of knowledge for those who follow. Rather than publishing every insight publicly, you collect your reflections journal entries, detailing lessons learned from setbacks, annotated research files that capture the evolution of your thinking, or private voice memos articulating the why behind important decisions. These personal archives, though hidden from the world, serve as a compass for the next generation. When a colleague stumbles across your detailed notes while assembling a project, they inherit not just a document, but the distilled wisdom of your journey. Over time, those who build on your foundation sense that there was an invisible architect shaping their path, even if they never meet you face to face. Equally vital is the example you set when navigating adversity. Public triumphs shine brightly, but it is in moments of struggle, when doubts flare, when criticism bites, or when progress stalls, that your behavior leaves the most lasting impression. By handling setbacks with quiet perseverance, adjusting strategies privately, reframing failures as feedback, and returning to work with renewed focus, you demonstrate resilience as a lived principle rather than a slogan. Those around you witness that resilience in subtle ways. A persistent email sent despite discouraging replies, a commitment to daily practice even when initial efforts fall short, or a steady refusal to let external noise undermine inner conviction. Years later, community members will recall not just your successes, but the unspoken lesson that true strength often resides in silent courage. Fostering a legacy in silence also includes the structures you leave behind. Instead of relying on charismatic speeches or bombastic proclamations, you embed your values into the very ways organizations, teams, and networks operate. You might institute a robust process for handing off projects, complete with detailed checklists, clear protocols, and a private archive of best practices so that successors can maintain high standards without searching for guidance. You may nurture a culture of open dialogue by writing a confidential note to key stakeholders, a few paragraphs on why psychological safety matters and how to listen effectively. Even as you step away, these invisible frameworks continue to shape behavior, ensuring that the ethos you fostered does not evaporate once you are no longer present. Relationships echo your legacy long after specific events fade from memory. When you practice empathy without seeking acknowledgement, listening deeply to someone's worries, offering support without demanding credit, or simply remembering personal details in passing, you communicate that people matter more than accolades. Over time, those who benefited from your kindness pass it on, recreating the ripple effect you set in motion. This chain reaction, often invisible to casual observers, weaves a network of connection that sustains itself independently, carrying forward the spirit of compassion you embodied in innumerable everyday interactions. Part of leaving an enduring legacy involves knowing when to step back and let others shine. In moments when your expertise might overshadow budding talent, you choose to provide space rather than dominate. You quietly endorse a colleague's idea in a private note. You confidentially recommend a peer for an opportunity, or you selflessly fade into the background so someone else can step into the spotlight. By doing so, you teach the next generation that true influence is not about occupying the center stage, but about lifting others toward it. Over time, your name becomes synonymous not only with your own achievements, but with the successes of those you've empowered. Maintaining humility plays a crucial role in this journey. As others begin to speak of you, sharing stories of your quiet impact, recalling your thoughtful interventions, or reciting your guiding counsel, you resist the impulse to claim credit or to reshape the narrative. Instead, you allow your story to unfold in the words of those you influenced, trusting that their authentic recollections more accurately capture the essence of your contribution than any carefully crafted self-promotion ever could. This restraint amplifies your integrity, subtly reinforcing the idea that a legacy built on genuine service carries far more weight than one built on bravado or self-aggrandizement. Even after you retire from a formal role or transition to a new field, the legacy you leave should persist in the values instilled and the habits encouraged. A researcher who steadfastly recorded negative findings 7, when positive outcomes were more attention-grabbing, teaches successors the importance of honesty in science. A manager who refused to compromise ethics for short-term gains sets a standard of principled leadership that guides future executives. A community organizer who prioritized listening tours over flashy rallies ensures that civic engagement remains rooted in the voices of everyday people. In each case, the echo of silent choices resonates through successive cohorts, shaping norms and expectations beyond your tenure. Sustaining this kind of legacy demands ongoing commitment to the principles you hold dear. You revisit your own habits regularly, perhaps, setting aside a quiet hour each week to reflect on where you've aligned with your values and where you've drifted, and you adjust accordingly. These private check-ins do not generate headlines, but they keep you anchored to the path you've chosen. When you model such introspection, you encourage others to do the same, even if they never explicitly admire your discipline. In this way, your legacy becomes not a static monument, but a living, breathing force that adapts and remains relevant as time marches on. Leaving a legacy without noise is a testament to trust in the people who will carry on your work, and trust in the idea that actions speak louder than words. You invest energy in others, equip them quietly with tools and insights, and then step back without clinging to recognition. As the years pass, your direct influence may fade from memory, but the undercurrent of values you established, integrity, resilience, compassion, humility, continues to guide those who once crossed your path. In that enduring, invisible way, your life's work becomes woven into the fabric of future endeavors, and when new leaders, creators, and thinkers look for a blueprint of how to make an impact that lasts, they follow the subtle indents left by your silent footsteps, proof that sometimes the most profound influence arrives not with a fanfare, but with the quiet assurance that lasting change begins in the spaces unseen. Chapter 10. Live the Philosophy. Make silence your way of life. Embracing the principles of quiet power and private mastery cannot be a temporary strategy. It must become the very essence of how you move through the world. To live the philosophy fully means to weave every lesson you have learned into the fabric of your daily life, so that silence is no longer merely a tactic, but a natural expression of your character. This chapter explores how to internalize the journey you've undertaken, transforming fleeting behaviors into deep-rooted habits and carrying the ethos of silent strength into every relationship, every decision, and every moment from here on forward. Begin by recognizing that letting silence define your worldview does not require you to abandon all communication or withdraw from society. Rather, it calls for discernment about when to speak and what to reveal. Cultivate the habit of pausing before you respond, whether in person, over the phone, or via digital message. Use that pause to ask yourself, will my words add genuine value? Is this the right time to share my thoughts? Am I speaking out of immediate emotion or out of thoughtful intention? Over time, this small pause becomes second nature. You find that your words carry far greater weight, not because you speak loudly or frequently, but because you speak only when it truly matters. Others come to know that when you do offer an opinion, it is worth their full attention. Let your morning and evening routines reflect the philosophy of silent mastery. In the quiet before dawn, engage in activities that center you: meditation, journaling, stretching, or mindful breathing. Rather than immediately reaching for your phone or diving into external demands, spend at least 15 minutes cultivating stillness within. Ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish today without seeking approval? How can I move toward my goals with integrity and purpose, unseen? This simple practice anchors you before the world demands your attention. In the evening, revisit the day's events in silence. Reflect on where you upheld your principles and where you drifted into unnecessary noise, whether scrolling through social media, explaining actions to unworthy listeners, or falling for distractions. By consistently cycling through moments of quiet reflection, you train your mind to measure success not by external metrics, but by your fidelity to the path of silent strength. Carry the philosophy into your work by maintaining an invisible ledger of effort and progress. Rather than posting every minor task or soliciting praise for each small victory, document privately the strides you make. This might look like a dedicated notebook or a digital file where you record salient challenges you overcame, new insights you gained, or incremental improvements you achieved, no matter how small they seem. For example, if you crafted a crucial email that landed a new partnership, note the strategies you used, drafting in the early morning when your mind was fresh, refining the tone until it aligned precisely with your values, and sending it without broadcasting the effort. Weeks or months later, when you review this ledger, you see a tapestry of consistent excellence moments you might have otherwise forgotten between the noise of daily demands. This silent record becomes both a testament to your growth and a wellspring of motivation when external validation lags. Embed the ethos of silent mastery into your relationships. Practice deep listening whenever you converse. Resist the impulse to jump in, interrupt, or share your own narrative too quickly. Instead, let the other person feel heard, valued, and respected. When appropriate, respond with concise empathy rather than dispensing unsolicited advice. Over time, people will notice that being in your presence means they can unburden themselves without fear of distraction or judgment. Cultivating this quality makes you a rare confidant, someone whose silence creates space for others to be vulnerable and authentic. Because you're not broadcasting every aspect of your own life, your words gain a sacredness that draws others closer, forging deeper bonds grounded in trust rather than spectacle. Let silence guide your approach to goal setting and decision-making, rather than publicizing every objective or subjecting yourself to external timelines. Commit to a private process of intention setting. Each month or quarter, in solitude, outline the next set of ambitions you intend to pursue, whether it's mastering a new skill, deepening a relationship, or developing a project that matters to you. Keep this list tucked away, consulting it only when you need guidance on where to focus your energy. Because no one else is watching, you are free to adjust, pivot, or abandon a goal without feeling pressured to justify your choices. This fluid, self-directed approach to growth ensures that your trajectory remains aligned with your evolving values rather than constrained by others' expectations. Carry the philosophy of silent mastery into the digital realm with discipline. In a time when every moment can be shared, decide consciously what you will reveal online. Perhaps you limit social media to a fixed time block each day, 20 minutes in the evening, simply to acknowledge updates that matter, respond to necessary messages, or glean meaningful inspiration. Outside those windows, turn off notifications, silence group chats that pull you into endless debates, and resist the urge to post daily progress updates. When you do share something, perhaps a well-crafted blog post, a thoughtful reflection, or an announcement of a significant milestone, announce only what truly merits attention. The rest of your work continues in the background, building silently until the next moment of emergence. Over time, your digital presence becomes not noisy commentary, but a curated showcase of what truly matters. Integrate the principles of silent mastery into your leadership style, whether you lead a team of 2 or 20, a community of volunteers, or a network of collaborators. Model a cadence of private preparation and strategic emergence. Keep major decisions under wraps until your plans are fully formed, then present them to your group with clarity and confidence. Let your team see that you value deep work and intentional communication. Encourage them to adopt similar practices, perhaps instituting quiet hours for focused tasks or establishing protocols for meaningful feedback rather than impulsive reactions. When your leadership emanates from a foundation of quiet competence, it engenders loyalty, trust, and a shared culture of excellence that ripples outward even after you step aside. Make silence central to your problem-solving approach. When faced with a complex challenge, whether personal, professional, or communal, resist the urge to broadcast your struggles or crowdsource quick fixes. Instead, dedicate a block of uninterrupted time to analyze root causes, brainstorm solutions, and test ideas in private. If you need input, reach out to a small circle of trusted advisors rather than soliciting mass opinions. This focused, behind-the-scenes refinement ensures that the solutions you implement are robust and thoughtfully considered. When you finally reveal your resolution, perhaps a streamlined process, an innovative strategy, or a reconciled relationship, the clarity and effectiveness of your approach speak volumes, leaving no room for questioning the depth of reflection you invested. Allow the philosophy to guide your approach to failure. In a public culture obsessed with highlighting only successes, moments of defeat can feel like tarnishing your reputation. But by embracing quiet resilience, you learn to reframe failure as a private lesson rather than a public embarrassment. When an initiative doesn't achieve its intended result, revisit the experience in solitude. Dissect what worked, what didn't, and what you might do differently next time. Document these reflections in your private ledger. Because you're not scrambling to explain or justify the failure to a broad audience, your focus remains on extracting value from the experience. Over time, this disciplined process transforms setbacks into stepping stones, ensuring that each stumble fuels your long-term growth rather than halting your momentum. Let the philosophy permeate your understanding of success. Instead of measuring triumph by applause, metrics, or fleeting acclaim, Measure it by consistency, purpose, and authenticity. When you live in silence, you redefine achievement to include intangible wins. The clarity gained from solving a stubborn problem in solitude, the sense of fulfillment from helping someone quietly, or the inner peace you feel when your daily practice remains unbroken. By elevating these quiet victories, you cultivate a contentment that isn't tied to external validation. Others may not see these moments, but you carry their power within you, witness to the real work that often goes unnoticed. Pass this philosophy forward by embodying it rather than preaching it. The most profound lessons travel not through rhetoric but through example. Whether it's a colleague who observes you consistently rise early to write, a friend who notices how unfazed you remain in the face of criticism, or a family member who witnesses your ability to celebrate small wins privately, the seeds you plant in others grow when they see you living the ethos every day. You do not need to deliver speeches or write manifestos. Your understated energy, your choice of thoughtful words over empty chatter, and your respect for silence become a living syllabus for anyone willing to learn. In every encounter, from quick runs to the corner store to boardroom negotiations, let the principles of silent mastery guide your decisions. Choose the power of focused effort over distracted busyness, the depth of private preparation over the hollowness of constant performance, and the long-term satisfaction of unseen progress over the ephemeral buzz of public recognition. When you live this philosophy, fully integrating it into your routines, relationships, decisions, and self-reflection, you transcend temporary success and craft a life that resonates, in whispers, far beyond the reach of any single moment or message. In that silent resonance lies the truest form of power, one that endures, inspires, and shapes the world without demanding to be seen. Chapter 11. Refine the path, iteration and evolution in silence. Every journey, guided by silent mastery, invites a perpetual cycle of refinement, an ongoing process in which each private breakthrough creates fertile ground for deeper growth. At this stage, you've internalized the principles of quiet preparation, selective sharing, and steady momentum. Now, the challenge is to treat your path not as a static destination, but as a living thread that twists and turns with each new insight. To refine the path means to embrace iteration, to quietly examine what has worked, identify what still needs improvement, and recalibrate your focus without fanfare or obligation to broadcast half-baked ideas. Begin by recognizing that iteration thrives in solitude. Early on, you may have worked behind the scenes to build a single project or to manifest a solitary goal. As you've tasted success, you also felt the pull of external validation, encouragement to replicate the same formula or to reveal your process prematurely. To refine the path, resist that pull. Instead, designate regular intervals, monthly, quarterly, or at whatever rhythm suits your work, for private audits of your progress. During these audits, revisit your initial intentions. Have your core values shifted? Have new opportunities or challenges emerged that warrant fresh thinking? By asking these questions without concern for immediate public optics, you allow the true contours of your evolving vision to emerge. Within each audit, acknowledge both achievements and areas that felt halted or painful. Perhaps a new venture produced unexpected friction, collaborators who misread your intentions, a product feature that failed to resonate, or a personal habit that slipped when external demands intensified. Rather than treating these setbacks as embarrassments to hide, regard them as data points in your private ledger. Revisit how you experienced the setback deep within. What emotional triggers arose, which practical missteps occurred, and how you originally responded. In solitude, you can chart a nuanced map of the misalignment between your aspirations and lived reality. From this vantage point, you can pivot, intelligently tweaking your routine, experimenting with alternative strategies, or refining your core message without subjecting every half idea to public judgment. Iteration also demands an openness to fresh perspectives, yet without sacrificing privacy. Instead of soliciting broad opinions, cultivate a rotating circle of confidants, mentors, peers, or a small mastermind group whose role is not to glamorize your achievements but to offer honest, targeted feedback on a specific aspect of your work. For example, if you're developing a creative curriculum, share a single module in private with an experienced educator, seeking input only on that slice rather than unveiling the entire program. When their insights surface, perhaps a subtle misalignment in pedagogical tone or a suggestion to reframe exercises for deeper engagement, integrate these pointers privately. This keeps your foundational course intact while still allowing it to evolve organically based on real expertise. Refinement also extends to your personal habits. In the early stages, building a habit, waking early, daily journaling, or consistent exercise offers tremendous leverage. But habits can calcify into rigid routines that no longer serve as your circumstances change. To keep your path alive, periodically examine each daily or weekly ritual. Is this practice still generating value? Does it still align with your long-term objectives? For instance, you might have begun a tradition of writing for 2 uninterrupted hours each morning, but as your goals shift toward community building, you might find that replacing one writing session with a weekly one-on-one mentorship meeting yields greater impact. Because you make this decision in private, you avoid the pressure to justify each change publicly. Your commitment remains to authentic effectiveness rather than to a script you shared with others months ago. Your body and mind require ongoing recalibration. A training regimen that once fueled your sense of vitality may become stale or misaligned. Rather than announcing to the world that you're flipping your fitness routine midstream, quietly explore new modalities, perhaps switching from long-distance running to strength training, or from guided meditation to a silent retreat. As you experiment, track your energy levels, mood shifts, and performance markers in solitude. When you settle on a combination that feels sustainable and enriching, you introduce it as a natural evolution of your practice, as a disruptive announcement. This silent shift underscores that personal growth is not about chasing trends, but about honoring the subtle currents within. Refining the path also means attending to the tools and environments that support your work. If you originally built your routine around a particular workspace, a small home office, a corner of a cafe, or a community studio, observe whether that setting still amplifies your focus. Over time, clutter can accumulate, digital files can become chaotic, or the energy of a location can shift. Periodically step into your workspace with fresh eyes, clear out old files, reorganize your desk, or experiment with a new backdrop that resonates with your current state of mind. These adjustments, done without announcing them to anyone, keep your physical environment aligned with your internal evolution. A purposeful workspace becomes an extension of your silent philosophia, place that invites deep work rather than superficial busyness. As you iterate, remember to honor the natural ebbs and flows of creativity. Quiet mastery doesn't demand uniform effort every day. It respects cycles of high productivity and moments of rest or recalibration. When you feel the spark of creative energy dimming, do not view it as a failure. Instead, retreat into silence. Take a day to wander, read something unrelated, or engage in a restorative activity that stirs your curiosity without pressure. Allow this downtime to inform your next burst of creation. When inspiration returns, you'll possess a refreshed perspective, often richer for the pause. Iteration honors this rhythm. Work deeply, step back to observe, refine in solitude, and then return to creation with renewed vigor. Another dimension of refinement is expanding your scope of influence thoughtfully. You may notice that a project you launched into the world quietly has outgrown its initial niche. Rather than publicly declaring a grand expansion, take the time in private to research adjacent fields or complementary communities. Perhaps your writing on focus and discipline has drawn interest from educators who teach mindfulness. You could quietly explore developing a specialized workshop curriculum for schools. During this exploratory phase, engage informally with key stakeholders, such as an educator who responded to your work without making formal announcements. This discreet alignment allows you to gauge genuine interest and identify potential collaborators whose values match yours. When you're confident, you can release a refined offering that resonates beyond your original audience, all while preserving the integrity of your silent process. Iteration also encourages you to reassess the language you use to communicate your vision. Words that felt powerful a year ago may now feel stale or overly generic. In solitude, sift through your previous writings, blog posts, emails, or private notes and highlight phrases that no longer capture your evolving intent. Experiment with new metaphors, clarify statements that once felt vague, and tighten language to reflect current realities. By refining your vocabulary in private, you ensure that when you present ideas publicly, whether in a keynote, a newsletter, or even a simple status update, each word carries deliberate precision. This linguistic evolution reinforces that your message continuously matures, rather than stagnating under the weight of familiar but outdated expressions. As you refine, resist the temptation to compare your current path with benchmarks set by others. In silent mastery, true progress is deeply personal. When you notice peers publicly unveiling ambitious new ventures, it's easy to feel you must match their pace or scale. Instead, revisit your private ledger. Record the milestones you've already achieved, those small wins celebrated only in your mind or a private journal. Measure your growth against that personal track record rather than external yardsticks. You'll often find that while others chase the spotlight, you have quietly built an authenticity and depth that transcends public accolades. This recognition bolsters the courage to iterate on your own terms rather than following a crowd. An integral part of refining your path is knowing when to archive or retire elements that no longer serve. Projects, habits, or relationships that once fueled momentum can eventually become burdens. In a public sphere, weighing whether to discontinue something can feel like admission of failure, but in private, you can evaluate with clarity. Does this endeavor still align with my core purpose? Does it energize me, or has it become a drain? When the answer is clear, give yourself permission to let it go silently. Archive outdated material, pivot your focus, or gracefully conclude collaborations. This quiet pruning prevents you from spreading yourself too thin and clears space for the next phase of growth. Iteration also calls for celebrating private milestones in ways that reinforce self-belief rather than public spectacle. Perhaps you completed a challenging certification, overcame a personal barrier, or perfected a skill that once eluded you. Mark these victories with simple rituals that resonate only to you: a handwritten note to yourself, a special meal you prepare in gratitude, or a solitary walk in a favorite spot to reflect on how far you've come. These intangible celebrations may leave no digital footprint, but they fortify your sense of progress. They remind you that the journey is not just about external impact, but also about deepening your relationship with your own potential. Recognize that iteration is a marathon rather than a sprint. There is no ultimate finish line where your work is deemed perfect. Instead, view every phase of refinement as a verse in an ongoing story, one written across years or decades. Each time you revisit your private ledger, refine your language, adjust your environment, or recalibrate a routine, you affirm that growth is an ever-unfolding process. By living this philosophy where silence is not passive withdrawal, but an active space for evolution, you ensure that your path remains alive, responsive, and aligned with the deepest currents of your purpose. In this continual cycle of quiet refinement, your work gains resilience and authenticity, reflecting the enduring truth that the greatest mastery emerges not through noise or haste, but through the patient art of evolving in silence. Chapter 12. Embrace the unseen. Trust in silent transformation. True mastery blossoms not in grand declarations, but in the subtle shifts that occur beneath the surface, those moments of silent transformation, so gradual and steady that they almost escape notice. In this final chapter, you learn to embrace the unseen, to trust that the quiet investments of time, attention, and intention you make each day are forging a version of yourself far more powerful than any public recognition could convey. By leaning into this invisible evolution, you cultivate a depth of character and capability that sustains you long beyond the applause and headlines. Transformation often feels imperceptible in real time. You might wake each morning, follow your routines, and finish each day without encountering any dramatic aha moments. Yet, if you look back over weeks or months, you notice that patterns have shifted. Your reactions are calmer, your focus sharper, and your creativity more abundant. These subtle changes your newfound ability to observe thoughts without being swept away by them, the ease with which you slip into deep work, the quiet confidence in speaking only when it matters, evidence of a silent metamorphosis. By acknowledging these small yet profound shifts, you reinforce the understanding that growth is an organic process, not a series of flashy reveals. Trusting in silent transformation requires letting go of the impulse to measure progress solely by external markers. It means resisting the urge to tally followers, count likes, or chase public validation each time you complete a task. Instead, you attune yourself to internal feedback, the clarity of your thinking, the steadiness of your emotions, and the sense of alignment you feel when actions reflect values. When your primary barometer is this inner sense of rightness, whether you acted with integrity, showed compassion, or honored your commitments, you anchor your journey in something unshakable. That anchor remains firm, even when the world offers no immediate applause. As you continue down this path, you'll notice that certain practices become non-negotiable precisely because you no longer need an audience to enforce them. Rising before dawn, choosing nourishing foods, carving out deep work hours, or quietly reviewing your private ledger, none of these feel burdensome or performative. They feel essential. You've internalized the value of each habit so thoroughly that adhering to it is its own reward. When external pressures threaten to yank you off course, an unexpected crisis, a distracting opportunity, or the clamor of social media, you instinctively return to your foundational routines. These routines, cultivated in solitude, become the scaffolding that holds you steady as the world shifts around you. Embracing the unseen also means acknowledging the role of patience in your evolution. Some seasons require more waiting than doing. Perhaps a project you poured countless hours into still hasn't borne visible fruit. Instead of feeling frustrated or questioning your worth, you remind yourself that certain seeds take time to sprout. Like a gardener tending soil for months before any visible growth, you continue to refine your craft, expand your perspective, and strengthen your resolve. That unwavering patience, practiced solely in your internal landscape, ultimately yields results that no rushed effort could match. When the harvest finally comes, it carries the flavor of seasons spent in quiet tending and deep trust. At times, invisible transformation brings discomfort. You outgrow relationships that once grounded you, your priorities shift in ways friends or colleagues don't understand, or you feel restless in environments where you once fit easily. In these moments, lean into solitude rather than seeking immediate external reassurance. Honor the discomfort as a sign that something is changing beneath the surface. Perhaps you need to withdraw from certain social circles or pause collaborations that no longer serve your evolving vision. By trusting these internal signals felt in a tightening of your chest, a restless urge to explore new ideas, or a quiet sense of misalignment, you respect your own trajectory without explaining every nuance to those around you. Over time, you find that the relationships and environments aligned with your new direction gravitate toward you naturally, drawn by the authenticity of your silent transformation. Embracing the unseen also extends to how you influence others. When you share ideas publicly, recognize that your role is to plant seeds rather than demand immediate change. Perhaps you publish a thoughtful essay on focused living, but only a handful of readers respond at first. Instead of deflating, you trust that those few minds will carry the concept forward, reflecting on it as they navigate their own lives. You understand that influence sometimes spreads unevenly, and quietly one person shares your insight with a friend, who later applies it to a problem at work, sparking a small wave of change. By releasing your ideas into the world without clinging to instant feedback, you honor the time it takes for meaningful transformation to ripple outward. Part of trusting in silent transformation is safeguarding moments of unstructured reflection. In the flurry of tasks, it's easy to fill every spare minute with errands, meetings, or digital distractions. Yet your capacity to sense unseen shifts requires pockets of blank space, a long walk, without a podcast, a silent pause after reading a challenging passage, a meditative 5 minutes before you start your workday. These intervals, though they seem like nothing happening, are fertile ground where subconscious processing unfolds. In the quiet, your mind weaves together fragments of insight, a fresh approach to a stubborn problem, a deeper understanding of your motivations, or a creative spark that propels your work forward. By preserving these zones of silence, you trust that real growth is often incubating beneath the threshold of awareness. Allowing transformation to unfold invisibly also means learning to interpret setbacks as part of the process rather than as interruptions. Suppose you experience a creative block, weeks of writer's block, a stalled project, or flat energy. Instead of rushing to fix the problem, publicly issuing updates, soliciting advice, or pivoting strategies, you retreat into private examination. You sit with the discomfort, journal your feelings, and explore potential causes, burnout, misaligned goals, or a need for fresh inspiration. Through this careful, quiet inquiry, you often discover that a minor adjustment switching from writing to sketching, taking a short retreat, or studying a new topic reignites your drive. These micro-adjustments made in the unseen realm of your inner life are what propel you to break through, often without any external announcement of how you overcame the slump. Another dimension of embracing the unseen lies in maintaining a healthy relationship with your accomplishments. When you achieve a milestone, publishing a book, launching a product, or completing a major goal, you might be tempted to celebrate loudly or to immediately set the next public target. But by trusting in silent transformation, you practice humble gratitude. You take a private moment to acknowledge the effort that went into the achievement. Thank those invisible mechanisms, your habits, routines, mentors, and moments of stillness that made it possible, and then gradually shift your focus to the next phase. You resist the impulse to rest on laurels or to broadcast your triumph as a way to fuel ego. Instead, you let gratitude and readiness coexist quietly, honoring past progress while staying open to future growth. Embracing the unseen also involves nurturing a community of silent supporters. Often, The most meaningful encouragement comes not from public cheers, but from private messages. A brief note from a friend saying they recognize your integrity, an email from a mentor offering a simple, "I'm proud of how you handled that challenge," or a text from a family member thanking you for being a steady presence in their life. These quiet affirmations, screened from the public eye, fortify your sense of belonging and remind you that you are not alone in your journey. By valuing these discreet expressions of support over public fanfare, you reinforce the principle that genuine connection and encouragement thrive in intimacy rather than in spectacle. Embracing the unseen culminates in an attitude of surrender, the willingness to let your life unfold without the need to script every outcome or to seek validation for every step. You recognize that you are part of larger currents of communities, ideas, and shared human experiences that extend beyond your individual timeline. By releasing rigid expectations of how and when your work must be recognized, you open yourself to serendipity. Perhaps a project you completed years ago gains new relevance, or a conversation you had in private sparks someone else's breakthrough. By trusting that unseen forces, chance encounters, evolving contexts, or the slow maturation of ideas play their role, you allow your legacy to grow organically, unhurried by your immediate ambitions. To embrace the unseen is to honor the quiet alchemy of personal evolution. It is to recognize that the most profound shifts often occur without fanfare, shaped by habits cultivated in solitude, guided by values internalized rather than declared, and sustained by patience rather than by external pressure. When you live this principle wholeheartedly, you cultivate a life in which silent transformation becomes both the means and the end, fueling an authenticity and depth of character that birthdays and awards cannot capture. In that space beyond sight, beyond noise, your evolution continues, unseen yet unstoppable, forging a legacy that resonates not through empty echoes, but through the subtle yet enduring imprint of a life lived in true alignment with silent mastery.